Okay, the purpose of this lesson is to go through, or at least to show you how maybe some classes and class things type stuff can be more powerful, right? So that's the idea of this lesson, and it's just we're going to put together a really cute little game. I think it's cute anyway. Maybe you guys won't think so, but it's a cute little Pong game. If you never played Pong before, it's a two-player game where you're kind of like table tennis, where you're trying to put your paddle in front of a ball, and the ball is kind of moving across the screen. And so that's what we're going to build here, and I'm just going to take you through it, talk some of the things so that you understand kind of what's going on, and then stop this video, type this stuff in, and bring it to class because we will update this thing and make it a little bit better, and then uh, let you guys sort of expound upon this little quick game. Okay, so this is tkinter or tkinter, depending on sort of who you talk to. If you've did what I asked you to do in the last Jupyter Notebook, then you already have it. If you don't, go back and look at the last Jupyter Notebook. It tells you sort of what you have to do in order to get tkinter. It may come with Anaconda download these days, but sometimes they don't. All right, so if you hit Shift Enter, you'll know whether you got it or not. And then the first thing that I'm doing here is I'm creating this canvas, right? So some of these little things you always have to do when you're creating a canvas in tkinter. So Shift Enter, so we'll do that, and you can see that it just creates this little window here, right? So we're going to start putting some populating this window, and exit out of it. Sometimes when you exit out of it, it'll tell you that you're no good. So the first object that we're going to create is called a ball. Obviously you need a ball and a paddle if you're going to play Pong. So what we pass into the ball object is our canvas, right? This thing that we created up here called a canvas. And then inside, so we have it self ID is what every time that, or when I create this ball, it's going to have an ID that associated with it so that I can go back and find out where that ball is at later on in maybe a different object. But what we do is we pass in canvas, and then canvas.create oval becomes or is actually a method inside this canvas object, this capital canvas object up here. And basically what it does is it creates a circle, creates a ball, and then I tell it to fill it in with whatever color we pass it in. So I guess what we need to talk about real quick is with the coordinate system here, right? What does the 10, 10, 25, 25 stand for? I kind of pre-wrote that out too. So in most graphics sort of programs, not plotting programs, but graphics programs, you'll see that positive X go from left to right just like they normally do, and that the positive Y it actually goes down. So the X0, Y, yes, so when you create an oval, the 10, 10, 25, 25 stands for this X0, Y0, and X1, Y1, where X0, Y0 is the top left-hand corner of the oval, and it's not really on the oval, but it's like if you draw a box around this oval, that X0, Y0 being the top left-hand corner, and the X1, Y1 is the bottom right-hand corner, so that you can know exactly where that sucker's at. And you can use these different coordinates to compare. And we'll see here in a second when we get down to determine if the paddle hit the ball, the different coordinates that we use. So and then later on we'll create a rectangle for the paddle. But for right now, let's concentrate on kind of what this oval looks like. And so we create this oval. I guess it's if you look at the delta X and the delta Y, it looks like it's a 15 by 15 little circle, and then we move it around the board. So we move it to where we want it to be or to start off at. And so we create it using those coordinates, and then we move it to 245, 100. And so where would 245? So 245 is in the X, and then 100 is 100 down. So it's about a quarter of the way up the screen, and about 245, about halfway over. Yeah, exactly halfway over, because this is a 500. The canvas was 500. So yeah, 245, 100. So we're about a quarter of the way up and about halfway over because this thing is 15. Okay. So let's go ahead and Shift Enter. So we'll create it and then let's look and see what happens. And you get an error here because I'm going to have to exit out of here in a second. So it's about a quarter of the way down and about right there, smack dab in the middle. So that That's the red ball, so we passed in red. Now we can change this if we wanted to a blue ball or a green ball if we wanted to. Shift enter, and you get a green ball and so on and so forth. So this thing is doing kind of what we wanted to do, and we haven't really drew anything yet or updated our ball yet. All right, so our next step is to create some sort of movement within the ball, and so that's the idea behind this. Is pretty much the same stuff is written in here, except for the fact that I got the self.x now and the self.y. So what is going on with self.x? Well, let's see. So we're doing a when we initialize, when we first come up, or when we instantiate the object, we're creating this thing. So the ball is going to come up, and then we're giving it a dot x and a dot y. These are not locations. They are how quickly or how fast or where do you want these things to move. So then the -1 means move down, right? So remember, yeah. So let's see what that looks like. Matter of fact, is a -1? I think maybe that's up, because yeah, that should be up. Let's see what happens. So shift enter, and then let's just make sure. Okay, I think that's down. I'm sorry, up, and then see what happens. Shift enter. Shift enter. Yeah, so it moves up first, and then it comes down and stops. And so let's see why it does that. So 0, -1, so it's going up, and then all I'm doing is using this method called winfo_height for the canvas object to return to me how high my canvas is. So I'm getting coordinates for that, and then I'm getting how wide it is using this other method, this winfo_width. And then when I call draw, all draw does is say, all right, self.canvas.move, self ID, right? Self ID meaning the ID of that ball, and then I'm passing in whatever X and Y into the move. And all that move does is move it by however much. So in other words, it's not moving the X at all, and it's decreasing the Y coordinate by 1. So that's what this move does. Position, and then it's grabbing the new position, right? So position, give me the coordinates on this canvas for that ID. All right, and then what we need to check is just if position 1, remember what position 1 is. Well, we talk about that here. Let me, position equals this x0, y0, x1, y1. So I think we talked about this, but maybe where x0, y0 is the top left-hand corner, and this is the bottom right-hand corner, just like we had in our little OneNote up here. All right, and then why am I doing this? I'm telling it to change position. So if position 1, what is position 1? So 0, 1. So it must be the y0 coordinates. When the top left-hand corner is less than 0, then I want to change my movement, right? So it was -1, and now it would be +3, and it would just keep drawing this until one of these conditions occurred. If position 3, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, when the bottom right-hand corner is greater than self.canvas, remember what that means, right? When it comes down here and it's greater than whatever my canvas value is, I tell it to hit the bottom. I tell it to basically stop. So if you come back over here, self.y goes to 0, ball.hit bottom equals true, and then what that allows us to do is to get out of this while loop, and then it becomes this main loop and we can exit out. So all I was trying to do was get rid of this this error business, right? Because I didn't want it to stay inside the while loop forever. When it hits the bottom, then exit out of there. Let's see, and then this is for later on. Now position 0 and position 2 are 0. So when the x0 is less than 0, so remember what that is. That's when the bottom left. So when this corner is less than the canvas, the 0 being in other words, it goes off the screen. We wanted to turn around and go the other way. So that's all that piece does, right? So when it's going negative, 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 well, then to change it to X be a positive. And then when the canvas width, when you get too big or too large, bigger than the canvas width, in other words, you're going off the canvas, then turn it around and make it go the other way. And check out which one it's looking at. So this one's looking at the the left-hand side, and this one's looking at the right-hand side. And that should make sense to you. Okay, so let's see. So we created the oval, we moved it. So hopefully you kind of understand what's going on inside the ball object. And when I hit Shift Enter, you can kind of see what happens. Oh, this thing doesn't move. So, oh, probably we didn't tell it to do anything. Shift Enter, Shift Enter. All right. So all that did is had an initial up, and then when it hit the top, which was this one right here, then it sped up, so it went even faster. So it was going up at -1, and then it started going up at 3, and that allows me to sort of get rid of that sucker. Okay, so the next part is to build a paddle object, and you can see some of the things that goes in here. It's kind of the same stuff where you got your self ID equal to that, create the rectangle so that I can grab the paddle whenever I want it. Self.canvas.move, again, same business. I'm basically creating the paddle, then I'm moving it to where I want it to be, 200, 300, or I'm moving it by 200 and by 300. And then self.x is equal to 0, meaning that I don't want it to move in the x direction at first. And really, you don't have a y movement. We'll never move this thing up and down. I mean, we could probably maybe make something like that, but it doesn't make much sense for a pong game to have a paddle that moves up and down. So this paddle is just going to move to the left and to the right. And then, okay, so canvas width is the same as we talked about before. It just uses that method inside canvas width in order to figure out how wide your canvas is. And then you have these things called bind all. So I'm binding the left key button. So whenever I press the left arrow or the right arrow, I'm binding it to this method. So that's what this bind all and this bind all is doing. So later on down here, you'll see a turn left method, and all that does is it sets self.x equal to -2, and then the turn. So that's the self left, and then self.turn right. So it'll come down here and just set your self.x equal to 2. So right now, the only thing you can do is move it to the left and move it to the right. So once that paddle gets going, it's only going to stop when. Oh yeah, it'll stop down here. So we'll see what happens down there. Okay. The next part is, so when do you know when the ball hits the paddle? So that's kind of the idea behind this thing, right? So the question is, like, hit paddle, did it occur? So you use the paddle objects method called hit paddle, and you bring it in, and then it already has the ball that's associated with it up here, right? So we passed that in already. So it knows to grab the coordinates of the ball. So that's where you get the ball position. And it knows its coordinates already because it's update every single time it updates and it passes in the new position. So all I'm doing is using POS, which is the paddle position, and the ball position, and then these coordinates here to determine if I actually hit the ball hit the paddle. So this is sort of the intersection of the two. And think about it for a second, why you would want to use the 2 and the 0 and the 0 and the 2. So here, I'll sort of go with you on that. So what we're trying to do on this first one is we're trying to align the X's. And the question is, do we want that to be a hit? And the answer, I think, is yes, right? So that's why I'm not comparing 0 to 0 and 2 to 2. I'm comparing this bottom right-hand corner to the top left-hand corner. So if these two are, within a certain, between each other, in other words, this guy right here is between this and this guy, then it should be a hit. So that's the idea. So in other words, it doesn't have to be straight on. It can have a little overlap, however big your ball is. And that's really what's happening here. And then the next piece is comparing the Y's. So basically you want, and I think it's doing 3, so it's only doing, for the ball position, it's only looking at your bottom right-hand corner, and it's basically comparing your bottom right-hand corner of your ball to the top of here and the bottom of there, right? So that's really all that sucker's doing. So if those 4 things are true, then it's saying, okay, you must have had an intersection with the paddle. So again, go back and look at this. I mean, it's probably kind of hard to pick up on just me talking, but the idea is that that should be an intersection and that should be an intersection, and not only ones where the ball just simply lines up right on top of the paddle. Okay. Okay, so, and then we'll return true. So you'll see we're using a class variable called score, and we're increasing the score there. Let's see what else. We're creating the rectangle. So we're creating this new thing called a score. So this thing right here, all it does is it puts a white canvas out there, a little rectangle, and then it throws a text in that says whatever this ball dot score is. So every time the ball hits the paddle, it's going to increase by 1, and it's going to tell you what the current score is. So that was the idea behind that. All right, and then the draw does the same thing that the ball draw does. It basically goes left and right. All right, so there's no y component here, but it will stop the paddle. So self dot hit paddle position equals true, then ball dot y equals -3. Think about what that's doing for a second. So self dot hit paddle, right? So it's coming here and it's asking the question, did the ball hit the paddle? And if that's true, then I'm setting your ball y direction, right? So the movement speed of the ball in the -3 direction. So that should make the ball go back up. So the assumption here is that the ball is coming down, it's going to hit the paddle, then I'm going to send it back up. So that's the idea behind that. And then the turn left and turn right. So those are two things that we associated with these key presses, right? So when I press the left arrow, it calls that. So if I press the left arrow, then that tells this thing to go in the -2 direction. So what is the -2 direction? When I press so if this is my paddle and I press a left arrow, then it's going in the -2 direction, so it's decreasing by a little bit. And then turn right is obviously +2. So, but right now I can't increase or decrease my paddle. I can only tell them to go in one direction or the other. All right, let's see what happens. Let me hit Shift Enter here, and I don't know if this plays the game yet. I don't think it does. We'll see. Okay, so this just puts the paddle and the ball out there so that you can see. And then obviously this thing is going to hit because I haven't put this sucker into motion yet. Let me see why it didn't go into motion. Shift Enter, and then Shift Enter, and then Shift Enter. So now it's going to go in motion. You can see the score come up. So 1, 2. So if I just left my paddle there, it would stay there, and I would get a really, really high score. You have to click on the thing whenever you start playing it. So now I'm going to move the paddle out of the way. So all I can do, there is no way to stop this paddle unless it gets to the side. Okay. All right. We can obviously, make it so I got 12, and then you'll see that it stops once it hits the bottom. Okay. And that's the idea behind the game. The only thing I think we need to change now is maybe this direction. So all I did was I copy pasted the ball object, the paddle object, and all of the code that sort of ran the thing using those objects. And now I'm going to give it a way that it's not just going up and down. Let's see, where did we right in here. So a direction, I gave it a -1 and 1, a -2 and 2, and then I basically shuffle and then give it whatever direction kind of gets shuffled to the front of that list. And Shift Enter. I got to be on my toes now because this thing is going to be moving around. Oh, there we go. And so I'm going to try to play the game for a second. And you got to kind of anticipate where the sucker's going. And so I can't. Okay. So the update to this game that we're going to talk about tomorrow in class. So get this stuff down. Stop the video. Make sure that you're able to get all. So I'm going to, just for a second, I'm going to show you the ball class. So get this thing in there. By typing this in, I feel like you're learning a little bit about it. I'm going to stop the paddle class. I'm going to try to put it all in one screenshot here. So that's the paddle class. You can stop the video. Make sure you get all this stuff in. We're going to use this tomorrow in class to update the game and make it hopefully a little bit better. And then this is the code that you need in order. So this is kind of what runs, right? So it uses these classes in order to put the balls and whatnot out there on the thing. Okay. Bring your questions to class. So if you have any questions about how this thing works, just come on into class and we'll figure it all out. All right. I'll talk to you guys. Hopefully you guys got something out of it, and I'll see you next time.